Hello, welcome to our overview of the General Data Protection Regulation, otherwise known as the GDPR. My name is John and I'm one of the GDPR practitioners here at Proactive. The GDPR represents the biggest shake-up in data protection and data privacy legislation for nearly 20 years. So we at Proactive have compiled a series of videos to help you understand, get to grips with and prepare for GDPR. So where did it all start? Well, concerns for human rights and privacy were raised by the powers that be at the end of World War II. With the atrocities that had been committed during the war, there was a general consensus that more could and should be done to protect people's privacy. This concluded in 1950, when the Council of Europe introduced the protection of individuals in relation to data processing. Fast forward to the 1980s, and the OECD introduced guidelines on the protection of privacy, and the European Convention on Human Rights introduced privacy rights. Then, with the advancement in the use of computers to hold and process our information, the European Parliament passed a directive to protect individuals in 1995. This EC directive transposed into UK law with the Data Protection Act 1998. This changed the landscape in terms of individual rights. However, with major advancements with the internet, e-commerce and social media, it was felt at the end of the noughties that the existing legislation was out of date and didn't take the digital economy into account. Therefore, the EU drafted and finally approved the GDPR in May 2014, which, with a 2-year period for implementation, comes into force on the 25th of May 2018. So if you haven't done so already, make a note of that date in your diary. So what is the GDPR? It is a new EU law designed to strengthen data protection for EU citizens, covering the processing of personal information. It builds on existing legislation and has 4 key objectives. The first, and probably most important, is to strengthen the rights we have as individuals, because in today's digital world we are not really that well protected. Our details are stored by more people in more places than ever before, and so we need to be sure that our details are kept safe, are used responsibly, and those who use it are accountable. Another area that needed addressing is that across the EU we have different interpretations of the EC directive on data protection and all have our own laws. There is no consistency across the EU, and for an effective single market, the different pieces of legislation need to be brought into line, along with consistent enforcement across the bloc. For example, a data breach in the UK could attract a completely different fine to that of the same breach in Italy. The GDPR rectifies this. On a daily basis, we hear of cyber attacks where people's details have been stolen, or incidents where details are lost, such as leaving a laptop on a train. A stronger obligation had to be placed on data controllers in order to protect data against willful damage, theft or destruction. And the GDPR goes a long way to ensuring that our data is secure. Finally, the way in which our data is used now is vastly different from even just 10 years ago. Our details are being monitored, tracked and analysed constantly, and it was felt that EU citizens needed more protection. So what does the GDPR cover? The GDPR concerns natural persons, which is defined as living individuals, and seeks to protect them where personally identifiable information is processed. When we talk about personally identifiable information, this covers anything which can wholly or partially identify someone. When we talk about processing, this covers any data that is processed wholly or partially by automated means, or any personal data that is part of a manual filing system. Now, as businesses, we are accountable, and we must ensure that we don't infringe the rights of EU citizens. Therefore, we need to be aware of the 8 rights as laid down by the GDPR. Firstly, we have the right to be informed. If I asked you how many businesses were holding and using your information, the chances are you wouldn't know. Under the GDPR, you now have the right to be informed as to who is using your data, why they are using it, and what they are doing with it. Businesses have the obligation to provide this information to their data subjects. Secondly, we have the right of access. We all have the right to access our personal data held by companies. We have the right to ask for it, and they have to comply in furnishing us with it. We are expecting to see a rise in subject access requests, where people ask to see the details that are being held. So consideration needs to be given to how you might handle these. Third is the right to rectification. If we hold data on data subjects, they have the right for that data to be rectified and are likely to exercise this right if decisions about them are being made with such data. Number 4, the right to erasure. This is commonly referred to as the right to be forgotten. If someone wants their details removed, they have to be erased unless there are legal grounds for not doing so. Number 5, the right to restrict processing. If we use customer data for certain processing, those customers have the right to restrict what processing we can do. Number 6, the right to data portability. This relates to customers who wish to transfer data from one supplier to alternative suppliers. For example, we can insist that one provider of a service facilitates the transfer of data to another provider and not use data protection legislation to obstruct commerce. Number 7, the right to object. We have the right to object to our data being processed, either on forms or for specific purposes, such as objecting to direct marketing. And finally, number 8, there are rights in relation to automated decision making and profiling. In a highly computerized world, automated decisions are made that can have a great impact on our lives. Whether that be a job application or a loan or finance agreement, we have the right for a decision to be made in person if we so wish. So from this presentation, I'm sure that you can see the impact of GDPR. It touches every facet of a business, from marketing and sales, who use customer and prospect information, HR, that hold and maintain employee data, and IT, who are responsible for providing the means to process and secure that data. That's all we have time for now, so I hope you have found this presentation useful. If you would like to discuss GDPR with myself or one of our practitioners, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Alternatively, you can book one of our seminar training workshops to find out more about what you need to do. Thank you for your time.